time on it at all, you can propose a number of things,
Okay. And then another question. Do you have any other bill formats like this?
Yes. You got some bills? You got some bills to give him? Blank bill sheet in your bag?
The guy with our bills is on the way.
So, are you helping with that legal pitch thing stuff yesterday?
I'm not part of the house.
Who went to the Senate to pitch?
Mental health.
Oh, yeah.
It was our clerk.
So,
The guy who's being billed.
so I spoke to the Senate counselor, and he said on that one particular group, he actually interfered, or intervened because they didn't give them Okay, guys, so you learned a little bit about this process, about getting things passed and getting things done. Senator Griffo yesterday, when I had talked to him and said that you guys have ideas to fix New York State, he was very interested in anything that came out of the body of serious nature that will, address issues in the state. You guys can do this still when you go back to your home. You can go back to your home, and let's say you're looking for a service academy or something like that. You're looking for some help. You can go back to your home and get involved in your local district and do things like promote Boy State in other schools or in your school. Get in the paper about that, or even talk about an issue you think about. Right now, you have a lot of political capital. You ever heard that term, political capital? Like when you first win an election, you get to drive the agenda and things like that. Well, you just come out of Boy State. So if there's things in your community you want to see, you go back to the leaders. They work for you too, and you flat out tell them, I want to see these changes in my backyard. So take this opportunity to make it work for you, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the schedule, as you can see, is been chopped and added and chopped, and I think
Is the bill speaker here?
I'm going to ask you one thing, though, at the very end. Put the chairs back kind of as they are. Yes, okay?
All right, thank you, sir.
Why don't you guys give me a hand with the I was gonna say, guys, you know, the legs fold. Or you could have brought it right here and just picked it up. So, I mean, is this an amazing way of doing it? Doing it the most difficult way?
All right, everyone, we're gonna get started. We're gonna once again be looking at proposals from both our own assembly bills and the Senate. We have a bill that's coming in later. It's being run down from the Senate right now that was passed by us, sent to the Senate, and amended. So hopefully we can get that one passed. I'm excited to get to that one. But currently we're just gonna start off with one of our own assembly bills. So I'm gonna hand it over to the bill speaker. Oh wait, one second. I have one more thing to mention. Do we have any motions before we begin? He's gonna go, you can go next.
Permission to
Motion for 3 people, tops for questions, 30-second question, and then the answer should be a maximum of 30 seconds also. Wait, can you get someone to write that down, by the way? Just, motion for 3 people, questions maximum. Each person gets 30 seconds to ask their question, and then a 30-second answer. All right, we're gonna vote on it in a second. We just need to. All right, yeah, we're gonna vote on it in a second. And if you guys want to set timers to help hold everyone accountable, that'd be very helpful. So we got it down. All right, it's time to take the vote on the motion. All right, all in favor, stand up and say aye. All right, the motion passes. All right, you had a motion as well? Any other motions? Okay, no further motions. We'll move on to the first bill. I'll hand it over to the bill speaker.
First bill. Farming Equipment. What is it? Wait, okay. Farming Equipment Software Act. In modern farm equipment, manufacturers have implemented advanced computer systems and computer-controlled hardware in their equipment. These systems, while beneficial, are costly for farmers to get repaired. These systems are only repairable by their respective manufacturers. This hinders farmers from repairing their own equipment in a timely and efficient manner, which, as a result, causes less of a crop yield and less of a profit. This loss of cost and profit can cripple a farmer's livelihood. Whereas a replacement wipers and lights control module specific for a John Deere combine costs $1,221. As seen, the computer systems repair is extremely expensive and has no instructions listed. Be it resolved that farm equipment manufacturers must make available repair instructions for all components pertaining to computer systems in their equipment to the buyer. This bill is a requirement for farm equipment companies, not a program or public service, and therefore requires no funding. This bill would go into effect 6 months after its enactment.
All right, would all members of any members of the Agricultural Committee like to come up and make any opening statements or arguments in favor of the Family Equipment Software Act, the Farming Equipment Software Act? Would you like to make a statement?
Yeah.
All right, you may.
Do I address you first?
Yeah.
Can I speak?
Yes, you
Mr.
may.
Speaker, can I speak? Thank you. All right, everybody. I actually live at a farm and work on a farm. Now, I don't have big industrial equipment like this, but I know some people that do. And in this software, when something breaks, you have to take it into the say you have a John Deere combine or something, and the computer system, your GPS locator, something like that, malfunctions. You got to take it into the manufacturer because you don't have the software instructions, repair manuals to fix it yourself. And when you do that, that puts you behind. Now you're on somebody else's timetable. Now somebody else is fixing your equipment, and it's not going to get done on time. So you're going to be at a loss. It's the software itself that's the problem.
So,
Do you have a question?
yeah, question, comment, sort of thing.
Yes, you may.
So, when it comes to like these software things, is it possible for farmers to fix them themselves, or is it necessary for more skills to do that? Would it be as simple as reading the instructions, or is the reason that the companies have it, you can only do it in the shop is because it's really just something you got to do in the shop? I'm definitely for this bill. Like, this does make a lot of sense. I'm just wondering if it's plausible to think that farmers could
All right, finish up your question.
get them. Yeah, plausible to think that farmers could actually fix them themselves with their equipment and training on hand.
You're over. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So farmers, the thing about these combines is it's really the transportation that's the problem. The So it's really the transportation of these heavy machinery, that's the problem. This software itself is not for sale or for use by anyone other than a authorized John Deere dealer. So farmers, if they did have this software, they would be able to purchase these computers and then thereafter fix these machines, which need so many computer-related parts to function. Does that answer your question?
Time. You guys went over your time for the answer to the question. We're going to move on to the next question, if that's okay.
Question, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, you may ask.
How does this affect the manufacturers, the people who are fixing these machines? Are they losing jobs in any way by giving out how to fix these machines?
So we actually thought about this when we were talking about our bill in the first place. Now, the people that are the mechanics for the equipment software, they could probably get restaffed building the software rather than fixing it. Probably not all of them would lose their jobs. It's obvious that some probably will. So that's why we have the 6 months between the passing of the bill and the enactment. And the enactment of the bill, so that people would have a time to find a new job. Also, these people, say they get laid off. Oh, never mind.
Any other questions? Oh, okay. You may. Okay. You may. Yes, you may.
I have a motion proposed amendment to the current bill where we also include that all farming equipment must have interchangeable parts manufacturing so that you do not need to take it to the same repair person as the person who designed such equipment to create competition in a free market within such processes.
All right. All in favor of the... Okay, does anyone second the motion? All right. All in favor of this amendment, stand up and say aye.
Aye.
We don't have to count there.
Four of them that they have there on priority, starting with the Boy State ones. When they finish the 2 Boy State ones, they're going to call you. I'll go over, pick them up.
The amendment is passed. All right, we're going to move on to voting for the bill proper now. Without any other further questions, statements that anyone wants to make before we move on? You can make a quick comment, yeah. Keep it short, though.
May I speak, Speaker?
Yes, you may.
All right. So some of these, like John Deere, I know that they hold like patents for some of their software, meaning that they can do what they wish with it, so they don't have to like right now, they don't release their software because they have the choice not to. But the point of this bill is to make the license purchasable, which we believe to be they will be more inclined to agree with, because then it provides them another form of revenue. 30 seconds.
That's all? All right, let's move on to the vote. All in favor of passing the Farming Equipment Software Act, please stand up and say aye. Aye. We're going to wait to get the count.
Some people don't want the same hardware because Ag Leader and John Deere have completely different systems, and Ag Leader sucks. Well, John Deere's okay. Ag Leader. It's a GPS software system. Maybe.
All right. The Farming Equipment Software Act has passed 38 to 9. Oh, my bad. 39 to 2. My bad. All right. I'm going to hand it off to the bill speaker, and he's going to introduce our next bill.
The next bill being presented, coming from the Assembly, the Equitable Education Act. Concerned with the education disparity between high-income earning schools and those that can't afford basic skills and services, and alarmed that poorer communities aren't receiving the education they need. Whereas, by balancing the funding across the state for schools, students from poorer communities can receive a better education. Be it resolved that the top 50% of schools in cost per student per year, after accounting for a cost of living adjustment, receive a 1% deduction in funding, so that the bottom 10% of schools receive said funding going towards teachers and a more expansive curriculum. The provisions for financing: richer schools' budgets, indirectly property taxes. This bill will be enacted on September 1st, 2025. All right, can all who are a part of the Education Committee come forward, including myself, to discuss this bill?
All right. Does the Education Committee, do they wish to make any opening statements or remarks? Do any members of the opening statement, the Education Committee wish to, guys? All right. Do any members of the Education Committee wish to make any opening statements or remarks? Yes, Speaker. All right, you may make a statement.
So part of the problem with the disparity in the state of school funding, one, it's depending on property tax, but it's also dependent on test scores. So let's say, you're in a little bit of a poor area and you're not getting as much funding for your school. Your school doesn't have enough to put towards education. This could lower your tests, lower the test scores in the school, and then they get even less funding because their test scores are lower. And it would just be, a repeating cycle of, not improving education because they're just getting less and less funding due to the detail that, they're doing worse technically for their test scores, but just because they can't put towards education. On Long Island, there's about 37,000 spent per student in education per year. In New York City, it's about 31,000 per student per year. In upstate New York, it's only $18,000. That is nearly half. It is half of what Long Islanders get, and it's what's causing the disparity.
All right. Do you wish to make a statement?
Yes.
You may.
All right, so my school's mad poor, and we have 3 science teachers in the whole district, and like, we're just gonna keep getting poorer because, like he said, test scores, and we don't have teachers, and we can't do good on tests because we don't have teachers. Word.
All
Mr.
right, we'll
Speaker,
take our 3 questions now.
may I comment on the bill?
Question or comment?
A comment.
All right, you may make your comment.
So the issue in reality, test scores, money, schools don't actually get that much money for test scores. In fact, what the state does, the real problem behind what you guys stated about the curriculum and such, is that, for example, in the 2023-2024 funding for New York State schools, out of the billions that were spent on schools throughout the entire state, near less than 1% went for the category of academic enhancement. So clearly that's a big problem that this isn't going to address that issue. The fact that we already spend a lot of money on schools, but we just spend it more on
All
administration,
right, you've gone over your
transportation,
time, so
etc.
please allow the committee to answer one of your questions.
Permission to speak, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, you may.
All right. So one of the things he brought up is that a lot of it isn't dependent on test scores. He is right. Although some is dependent, it's about 75% is dependent on property taxes of the area determining it, which is consideration. But New York State, it doesn't go directly to the schools based off your property tax. It goes in a pool and then is distributed back out. So it's still how they're distributing it. It's not like we're taking, a super large amount from these schools. It's most of, the wealthy schools that have too much.
All right, next question.
I have a question, Mr. Speaker.
You may ask.
So if I'm understanding your bill correctly, it would be taking, once schools reach a certain point of achievement, they start losing funding to be put down toward the less than 10%. Is that the gist? So I might just be absolutely nuts on this, but is what the bill is suggesting is taking money from the higher scoring, wealthier schools, taking some percentage from that, and then dropping it to giving that to lower ones.
All right. I just want to remind everyone too, by the way, answering questions, you have 2 minutes. So, all right. Do you have another question? Oh, you got to answer. All right, you may answer.
Okay, so part of it, it's not like balancing out the schools, directly. The idea is just to, take a little bit from some of the top ones that we know have, so much extra. Also taking into consideration cost of living. That's part of the bill because, you don't want to take from a school that's on Long Island, let's say, they have a higher pay, but, the cost of living is so high that, the teachers need some extra pay there. But part of the idea is just, taking from the schools that have that little bit extra and giving it to schools that are really
That's time
not
for your answer.
don't have the money.
They do.
It's not taking.
The original motion said 30 seconds for a question, 30 seconds for an answer. That was the original motion that I wrote down. So unless you guys want to create a new motion.
If anybody wants to motion to fix that or change that, yes.
I'd like to create a motion to extend the time for an answer for a minute because the question takes a lot shorter than the answer.
Okay.
And every
Okay.
50 seconds instead.
So wait, are you going officially with 50 seconds?
50 seconds.
Are there any seconds to this motion? I see seconds. All right. Can the ayes raise their hand and say aye? All right, eyes down. All nays, can you stand and say nay? All right, this motion passes. Speakers will now have 50 seconds to respond to any questions. What? Yes, the time to ask questions is still 30 seconds. Does anybody else have any questions before we go to voting on this bill? Or comments? All right, seeing none, we'll now move into voting procedure. Can all in favor of passing this bill stand up and say aye? Can we get a count? All right, this bill passes 31 to 11.
All right. So in the Senate right now, I'm gonna need two members of I'm gonna need one member from Banking and Finance, the Banking and Finance Committee, if one of you would like to stand up because one of your bills is on the floor. All right. And I'm also gonna need a member of Ethics and Judiciary. Is there anyone who'd like to go speak for their bill? You will? Wait, who will? Okay, someone else has to count votes. Ethics and Judiciary. Okay. All right, we have our people. So we're going to move on to our next bill. Yeah, we're going to move on to our next bill. I'm going to give the floor to the bill speaker. Make sure you listen up.
All right. The next bill being debated, the Ultra Affluent Asset Tax, parentheses UAA. New York contains some of the most billionaires per capita of any place in the world. By holding on to assets that generally appreciate in value, for example, stocks, bonds, ETFs, etc., by holding on to these assets, not only are they not taxed until they sell such assets, but by holding on to them for over a year, they pay a smaller tax on such assets, leading to even greater wealth inequality. Whereas New York faces some of the greatest wealth inequality in the U.S. and has one of the greatest state budget deficits in the country, be it resolved that any assets, including but not limited to stocks, bonds, ETFs, real estate, businesses, and fine art, valued in excess of $1 billion US, be taxed yearly at a rate of 1.5%, regardless of if that asset is sold or not, based on the values of said assets at the end of that year, December 31st. All right, I wrote this bill, so.
All right, members of the Economic and Housing Committee, if you'd like to come up to make any statements. Oh.
All right. So one of the main reasons
Do you
why...
want the floor?
What? Oh, Mr. Speaker, may I have the floor?
Yeah, you may.
Okay. One of the main reasons why we should pass this bill is because currently in New York State, there is a huge wealth inequality gap, especially seen in New York City. New York City also contains, as said in the bill, some of the most billionaires per capita. People who have over $1 billion are clearly doing well for themselves and do not need any extra money. At this current moment, there is no such tax on any assets. Therefore, if somebody were to put an extreme amount of wealth into a stock, bond, or ETF and let it appreciate at a general rate of 8 to 10% after inflation, which is the year-over-year average, this person would not have to pay taxes on those returns. Mind you, these would be $80 to $100 million per year, until they sell such assets. And when they sell such assets, the tax that they pay on them is less than the tax that they would normally pay on other earned income. As a result, I'm proposing this bill to tax such assets regardless of whether they are sold or not at a rate of 1.5% per year. Now, this rate does not seem too high, nor is it designed to
All right.
be high.
I think we're going to move on to
Okay,
questions,
perfect.
if that's all right.
Yep.
All right, anyone with questions, please come up. The three who have questions. All right.
Mr. Speaker, can I ask a question, please?
Yes, you may.
So my question is, would this tax affect the average New Yorker, or would it only be for billionaires?
Well, considering written in the bill, it only says on anything valued over $1 billion, and considering most average New Yorkers don't have $1 billion in spare change, I would have to say it's not meant for the average New Yorker. On the same note, for people who have over $1 billion, the first $1 billion worth of assets would not be taxed at all, therefore incentivizing them to possibly reduce their wealth so they don't have to pay taxes.
Mr. Speaker, may I address the?
Yes, you may.
What's the estimated return on this tax to the overall state funds? What's the overall return for the state in regards to this tax?
All right, that's a great question. So, although I don't know the exact numbers, they're around, I believe, somewhere in the range of 100 to 200 billionaires in New York City. All right? Now, these numbers vary depending on the billionaire because there's a difference between $1.2 billion and somebody who's worth $100 billion. But, for example, let's say there's somebody who's worth $20 billion, right, in assets. Those first $1 billion won't be taxed. The $19 billion that they had left would be, again, at a rate of 1.5%, and only on assets that they own, not on any cash or on any currency. Therefore, if you take 1.5% of $1 billion, that would put you at $15 million per $1 billion owned.
All right, that's time. Thank you for your statement. We have another question. We were going to have three, so final question here.
Mr. Speaker, a question?
Yes, you may have the floor.
So would this have any adverse effects such as driving billionaires out of the state because many other states don't have laws like this and this would just encourage them to leave?
Mr. Speaker, may I address the questioner?
Yes, you may.
All right, that's a great point. However, I would have to argue that no, it wouldn't. Moving is expensive. As a result, people don't do it unless they need to. The cost of changing real estate from point A to point B is not cheap. Also, this tax is not in excess of 1.5%. Most taxes on such assets can go upwards of 10, 15, 20%. The reason we're keeping it so low and to such an extreme level is so that we aren't harming the average or even the affluent New Yorker. We're only trying to take those from the richest of the rich. And again, not so much where we encourage them to leave. And that's why the taxes are so low, relatively speaking. But if you look at certain individuals and their tax filings, they get away with paying taxes in the levels of thousands to tens of thousands.
Time.
And we don't want that.
All right, does anyone have a proposition for any amendments? No? Should we move on to voting for the bill? All right. All in favor of the ultra efficient asset tax, please stand up and say aye. Okay. All right. We'll begin counting the votes. Yeah, just, like, if you're voting yes or no and you need to be standing, remain standing until I announce whether or not the bill is passed with the count. The bill has failed. 17 in favor, 23 in opposition. All right. At this time, I would like to ask if we have a motion for any bills that anyone in the audience would like to see put on the floor. You got to make a motion. Come up with the mic.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to propose a motion to vote on the Transportation Committee high-speed rail bill.
You may. Anyone second this motion? All right. All in favor, stand up and say aye. All right, we'll move on to this bill. Yes, the Transportation Committee can come up too. I'm handing it over to the bill speaker.
All right, this is the Northeast High-Speed Rail presented by the Transportation Committee. High-speed rail is necessary and beneficial for New York State because it is a cheap and efficient means of travel long distances that reduces carbon emissions and benefits travelers. Future high-speed rail travel between cities in the Northeast would reduce unnecessary carbon emissions from driving, and air travel would allow travelers to reach urban destinations in the East without driving and dealing with traffic and congestion. Is this congestion the right word you guys use here? Okay. And congestion, the difficulty of air travel. Number 1, high-speed railways and trains will be manufactured. Number 2, railways will be built between urban areas in New York State. And number 3, high-speed networks across the state can be connected with other states to form a large network across the Northeast.
So our goal here is to create a high-speed railway system throughout the Northeast using bullet train technology, which is very environmentally friendly and efficient, better than air travel, which is what we are trying to combat here. Our goal with this system would to create short-range lines between major cities in the Northeast, allowing people to travel between them without driving or flying, therefore reducing carbon emissions. In addition, bullet train travel is cheaper than air travel, and it removes much of the hassle, and it will be very beneficial.
Yeah, the financing, tax money, this can result from congestion pricing, state rent, gambling, and ordinary tax revenue. If you have a question, just come forward to the microphone.
So a bill like this already went through and failed because they determined that the Amtrak that we have right now, those rails won't be sufficient enough for the bullet trains. So how do you plan on making that?
Yeah, can you get a little closer to the microphone so everyone can hear you in the back?
Yeah, are you gonna make a new track, or is there gonna be more revenue on that? Because that feels like a big transportation nightmare. Yeah.
So our proposal for this project would be to build completely new railways, just create a completely new system using what land we have available and what resources we have. It would be very expensive, but ultimately it would be beneficial.
Mr. Speaker, may I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
What would so you say bullet train travel is cheaper than air travel, or faster at least. What is the greenhouse gas look like on this, like just in terms of an environmental impact?
So bullet trains actually use electricity and/or they have a electricity engine inside the train. So yes, it's the magnetic trains. Yes, so they use magnets and they send electric pulses through the magnets that activates them, and it travels up to 300 miles per hour.
So what you're saying is it would be more environmentally effective than air travel?
All right, we're going to move on to the next question. Yes, you may have the floor.
May I have the floor?
So I would like to say that I do believe that trains is a great way to cut down carbon emissions, but my only problem with this bill is that it costs $200 million per mile to create bullet trains. So even with 200 million to 119 million, the distance between Syracuse and Albany, which are some big upstate, cities, is 145 miles. That would be a lot of money just to connect those two.
I don't think it's that much.
Our estimates for the cost of building a rail were a lot lower than $200 million a mile. And additionally to that, the air travel industry is worth billions and billions of dollars. So if we could tap into the market in the air travel industry and get some of the people who would usually fly maybe to upstate Syracuse, Rochester, to instead take trains, which would reduce carbon emissions and air travel pollution, we could also make money back if we can get a lot of people using these lines.
We actually found out it's actually 1.85 million per mile, not 200 million. Also,
All right.
it's already been done to an extent, so clearly it is possible.
Questions are cut off. That was our 3 questions. Does anyone want to propose any amendments to this bill? Any opposing statements? All right, we have an opposing statement.
All right, so last year, the New York State Department of Transportation proposed a similar bill and said that they're going to dedicate $6 billion to build a railroad across New York State. But because it was not that much faster, it got shut down pretty quick. So do you have estimates for how much faster this train would be, how much time it would save? Because so far, it doesn't seem much faster.
I got it. So high-speed rail travels at approximately half the cruising speed of an airplane, and in addition to, while that will take twice as long as an airplane, you're also removing like time at the airport, time through security, time waiting. So it's a lot more efficient for travelers. They spend a lot more time actually traveling than they do waiting around.
A train from Baltimore to DC only takes 15 minutes.
All right. No further opposing statements. No further no propositions for an amendment. All right. Very well. We'll move on to voting. So all in favor, stand up and say aye. High-Speed Rail Act has passed 35 to 9. Okay, we're gonna vote. We're gonna begin. We're gonna look at an amendment that was passed on one of the bills we have already passed ourselves. This amendment was made by the Senate. This is a bill from the Assembly, so we're just gonna vote on the amendment. I'm gonna hand it over to the bill reader.
Okay, I'm not sure if you guys remember, but this was the Security, Trading, and Limitations of Legislators, or the STAL Act. It was talking about how all elected officials in New York State shall be prohibited from trading liquid assets while in office. Liquid assets shall be defined as stocks, bonds, ETFs, options, and cryptocurrency. Elected officials shall also be prohibited from having trades made on their behalf. The amendment the Senate has sent down to us is that officials at the municipal level or lower shall be allowed to exchange liquid assets, but must give full transparency on their trades while in office.
All right. If any members of the Ethics and Judiciary Committee would like to speak about their thoughts on the amendment, they can, if they wish, to explain any finer points of detail.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak in favor of the bill and the amendment.
Voting for the amendment?
Yes, just to speak about the amendment?
Yes, you may speak about it.
Yeah. Okay, so I think this was a concern that a lot of you guys did bring up, and I think this solves that. This prevents very high-level officials who have a lot of influence and a lot of power from trading stocks and benefiting at the expense of, having access to information that the general public doesn't. But a lot of you were concerned that lower-level elected officials, like city councilmen, town supervisors, what about them? So this amendment would allow those guys to trade stocks. So this will prevent corruption and insider trading without harming lower-level officials and without preventing people from being allowed to participate in the stock market. Thank you.
Anyone in opposition to the amendment, or do we have our anyone with questions? No? Should we move on for voting? All right, let's get this thing passed. All right. All in favor of passing this amendment, please stand up and say aye. The amendment to the STAL Act has passed unanimously. All right, we're going to move on to, I'm going to hand over the floor to the bill speaker. We're going to look at a bill from the Senate. Wait, you guys go down. Oh, we go down. Sorry, we don't. No. So, go down there and talk to. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, this is the Aquatic Restoration Fund from the Senate and from the Environmental Conservation Committee. New York State waterways have seen wide varieties of damage and pollution, which ultimately proves detrimental to the waterways and waterways ecosystems and their surrounding communities. In order to combat this, the state would set aside 10% of the annual New York State climate change activities budget to fund local nonprofit organizations dedicated to restoring New York State waterways, which would cost the state less than having to set up programs itself, while also supporting nonprofits within the state with a mission of bettering their communities. For the bill proper, number 1, 10% of the budget shall be allocated to accept applicant organizations. 2, of the admitted organizations, at least 25% must be preventable programs. 3, application process would include submitting detailed descriptions of the program's pros and cons and amount of funds required. 4, management of projects will be left to the private nonprofit organizations. 5, amount of money allocated to each program is to be determined by the state bred on necessity of program. 6, this fund will not provide for the New York State Oyster Project. Provisions for financing: 10% of the 10% of the annual New York State Climate Change Activities Fund.
One thing before we begin making statements, is number 0720 here? All right, you're needed in the Senate. If you want it, you can go head down. All right, I'm gonna, if any of the senators who penned this bill wish to speak and make any opening statements, they may now do so.
All right. So I just want to give you guys a little bit of information about how important our water sources are for here in New York State. So the Great Lakes make the region around $52 billion. The Long Island Sound generates around $9 billion. And different oyster farming, which includes like aquatic, although this isn't going directly to helping oyster populations, by improving the water sources there, we can assume that the fish-related industries here in New York State will increase as well. So in Long Island alone, the oyster and the shellfish industry generated around $30 million. So what this initiative is basically doing is it's implementing preventable methods through nonprofits to make sure that this pollution is not continuing, creating a cycle of basically just pollution along with state funding, then more state funding to combat that pollution, instead by trying to combat the problem while also making sure.
We're going to have to call time here so we can get our 3 questions in. Oh, it's all right. All right. So does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Speaker, can I ask a question?
You may ask.
I was wondering, do you guys have any ideas for basic ideas on what non-for-profits you were thinking of donating to from the state?
Yeah,
do you want to respond to the question? Yeah, is it cool? Mr. Speaker, can I respond to the question?
Mr. Speaker, may I respond to the question?
You may.
I appreciate it. Yeah, so as we stated, because the oyster bill got passed yesterday, they have their own separate funds. So like we won't be sending money to the Billion Oyster Project or any other New York State oyster projects. But there are other projects within the Lower Hudson Valley region, for example, like the New York River Keeper. They use programs like dredging and hydro raking, which help to obviously clean up that area. And then there's a variety of nonprofit organizations across the state. But our whole point is to minimize the spending of taxpayer money by allowing these nonprofit organizations to run these programs.
All right. Do we have a second question, or?
I would just like to state my support of this bill. I think it's a good one.
Oh, you can support it. All right. Any other statements? Yes, yes, you may.
Right, so the overall purpose of this bill is to make sure that we obviously minimize the amount of money that we're spending, the amount of taxpayer money that we're spending, while also properly funding and increasing the variety of programs that we use to clean up our waterways, because we want to make sure that we're not creating another problem thinking that we're just solving one. All right, so that's the basis of this bill.
All right, without any other questions, comments, or statements, we'll move on to voting for the the Aquatic Restoration Fund. All in favor, say aye and stand up. The Aquatic Restoration Fund has passed unanimously with 2 abstentions. All right, we're going to move on to the next bill. All right, I'm going to hand the floor over to the bill speaker. Wait, Will, wait, we need the bill. One thing. All right, we're going to hand it back over to the bill speaker. Sorry, guys.
All right, this is an assembly bill from the Wagering and Racing Committee. It's called the Gentlemen's Wagering Act. Young American lives can serve and die at war, but are not allowed to gamble below the age of 21. Sports betting is a rapidly growing industry among the American people, especially among the youth. Within New York alone, the revenue of sports gambling grew to nearly $212 million in 1 month, May, representing a 34% increase. Whereas lower sports gambling from ages 21 to 18, lower sports gambling from age 21 to 18. From 18 to 21, users are limited to 10 bets per month. Be it resolved, this bill will lower the sports betting age from 21 to 18 while limiting the amounts of bets per month to address possible addiction of young minds. For financing, there's none requested because this bill will increase the market size of sports betting using current capital gain taxes to increase government profit.
All right, members of the Wagering and Racing Committee, you can come up if you'd like to make any statements regarding your bill.
Guys, so
do you wish to speak, make statements?
yeah, I'll just make a quick statement. Just to sum it up, basically.
Mr. Speaker, you gotta say, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, you gotta ask me to have the floor. Yo, when you come up, you gotta ask me to have the floor, just so you guys don't forget. Like Mr. Speaker, may I make a statement? Mr. Speaker, can I ask a question? Like,
Mr. Speaker, may I make a statement?
you may.
Thank you, sir. So basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to access the age group from 18 to 21 with sports gambling. That's like referring to the college kids because it's a very big thing. And I feel like a lot of people do it illegally. So our goal is just to lower it because if people can go fight in wars and die at war, why can't they gamble their own money? However, with the mental health issues, obviously there's that con. A lot of people said like, we don't want people getting addicted at a young age. So what we ended up doing was limiting it to 10 bets per month, which we feel is about enough. So that should try to hold back some of those addictions. When it comes to like advertising, I know somebody mentioned advertising should just be banned completely from sports. I disagree because if vaping industries and alcohol industries can put commercials up, especially alcohol in sports, I don't see why gambling can't. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, it's time for our 3 questions. Anyone with questions? Members of the Wagering and Racing Committee can stay up if they wish to address any questions as well. All right.
Mr. Speaker, may I address the floor?
You may ask.
All right. So I just kind of find it hard to imagine like how you're going to regulate 10 bets per month. How do you plan on like regulating that and not foreseeing any loopholes.
I think we could probably put it within the program. I mean, we could probably put something with like the terms of services. I mean, yeah, it's hard to kind of regulate that, to be honest. I see your point. It's kind of like the whole you have to be 18 or older in the terms of service, and everyone clicks accept. So I could see how that could be a problem. We could try to address that later on, maybe. Oh, license. Yeah, licensing could actually work. So if we take a photo of the license and it can go through our system, that actually makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Genius.
All right, guys, I know we all have questions, but I'd just like to remind you, please don't speak out of turn or when you're not up on stage. All right? You guys can continue with talking.
Mr. Speaker, can I propose an amendment?
You may.
So could we just get rid of that 10 bets a month thing? Because if, you know, they're 18, you're allowing them to bet, might as well let them bet what they want, right?
I'd like to say something in opposition to the amendment, as when you're 18, your brain isn't fully developed, so maybe putting a limit on the amount of bets you could make could, you know, you don't want someone who's just starting out in life to ruin their life with, you know, gambling debts or, you know, just losing all their money. So that's just something I wanted to say before we move on to vote.
Could I give like a rebuttal to that or no?
You can make a rebuttal, yes.
So like once you're 21 and you're allowed to drink, they like don't give you like, you can only have a certain amount of alcohol. You can drink whatever you want once you're 21. So once you're allowed to gamble, might as well be able to gamble what you want.
Yes, but I think here we have an opportunity to prevent a serious problem, because there are people who, when they turn 21, I've heard, you know, many stories of college students drinking themselves to death or dying due to just excess indulgence with alcohol on their 21st birthday, because, you know, the mindset is, I can do it now, it's legal, I might as well do it as much as I want. We have a chance to stop that same issue here with gambling. So, same scenario, just instead of dying from alcohol poisoning, digging yourself into a hole with losing tons of money or going to debt.
Yeah, do you want to just like vote on the amendment?
All right, does anyone want, we're going to have one final statement. Yes, you may have one final, yeah.
So I actually disagree with him on this, and it's only because of the fact that obviously, how many people here drive? Do you guys drive? Did you know how you had to get a permit? I feel like it's a similar thing. So I feel like 10 bets is enough, especially for college kids. I think they'll be fine. I don't see any problem with it. I mean, I can see where you're coming from. I 100% agree with you. But obviously, like, you can only weigh so much. So.
All right, we're going to move on to voting for the amendment. All in favor, stand up, raise your hand, and say aye. All right.
We lost.
Is that all? The amendment has failed.
I've been gambling since I was like 12.
We're going to move on to voting for the bill proper. All right. I ask that everyone please be seated for the bill. The voting. All right. All in favor of the the Gentleman's Wagering Act, please stand up and say aye. I don't see anything wrong with it. That's my personal opinion. So. The Gentleman's Wagering Act has passed 27 to 16. All right. All right, we're going to move on to our next bill. Actually, rather, instead of moving on to our next bill, how about we motion for anyone who would like to see a new bill proposed or put on the floor? Make a motion if you feel. Oh, never mind. Scratch that. Okay, we're going to go with this. Assembly bill has just come back from the Senate. Was it amended? Yeah. Okay, it has been amended, so we're going to vote on that amendment now. I'm going to hand it over to the bill speaker.
This is the Boy State's Bible reform. Do you guys want me to read the bill proper before the amendment again? Okay. This was the, so all descriptions of government positions shall be revised to include sufficient accurate information about such positions. Any city, county, and state positions not explicitly listed under elective or appointive positions for city, county, and state government shall be listed. And a new version of the handbook shall be printed annually, incorporating yearly changes shown by the Boy State legislator. Funds will be derived for the new, already used to make handbooks every year. The amendment made was every typo noticed in the Boy State handbook to be corrected. Yeah, the amendment that they're putting forward is that in addition to everything else, that every typo that is seen by a Boy State member to be corrected.
I'm going to make a statement as well. Like, this seems a little, like scrutinizing, but I don't think it's a reason to kill the entire bill because of something like this, because I still think it's very important that the information in the book is updated, even if this amendment is kind of, in my opinion, yeah. All right, we're going to move on to voting. All in favor, stand up and say aye. All right, the amendment has passed unanimously. That one makes me happy. What did you say?
Can I get these people? They go to Senate?
Oh, yes, you may. Yeah.
All right, can I please have a member of the Wagering and Racing Committee stand up who would like to come and take this bill over to the Senate and present it? Anybody here from the Wagering and Racing Committee? I'm not sure.
Wait, anyone returning from the Senate, would you mind in just coming up and talking to the leadership really quickly? All right. No, that was the one about like letting New York State letting you know what just to let you guys know, two of our bills that were sent to the Senate just passed. Can we get a round of applause for everyone who was involved in writing that? All right, so we had the one against, well, the one that would involve New York State letting you know how much you owe on your taxes, all that information. Yeah, and also taking action against companies like TurboTax and who would be lobbying against it. And then there was also the Farming Software Act. We're going to need a moment to discuss which one we're going to put on the floor next, if that's all right. You guys can like take a break and like go on your phones if you want. Stretch. Just don't leave. Come back in a. Just don't like wander out. Just make sure you're still here. All right. All right, guys, we're going to come back to attention, all right? So I'm going to hand it over to the bill speaker. We're going to move to our next bill.
Okay, this is a very, very similar bill, but slightly tweaked from the one that we passed yesterday. This one is from the Senate, the Boys State Orientation Refinement Act, put forward by the Boys State Committee in the Senate. The purpose of Boys State's orientations was to prepare delegates for the program. However, they have fallen short of their intended purposes. According to a Boys State's 2024 survey from delegates from each county, 97% of the delegates stated that they felt either underprepared or clueless regarding the election process within Boys State, leading to a severe decrease in engagement. Delegates were not able to fully understand the role of each position, resulting in a lack of confidence to participate in city, county, party, and state elections, damaging the Boys State experience for said individuals that wanted a leadership position. Bill proper. Number 1, creation of a standard video and PowerPoint detailing positions and procedures of Boys State. And number 2, providing the necessary resources like the current year's addition to the Boys State's program prior to Boys States. So providing the Bible before you get here. Provisions for financing. Production and cost will be incurred by Boys State's video production team for modern standard video. So very similar to the one that we passed up, but just in case that they shoot ours down, we can also pass this one right here as well. It's almost the same.
I know this bill is something we've all already passed basically on our own. So I'm not sure if anyone from the Boys State Committee would want to come up and talk about it. If they can, they may. But if not, we can just move right on to voting because I think I know what the result is going to be. All right. All right, motion to move to voting. All right, all in favor, just say aye. You don't have to stand up. All right, let's move on to voting for the Boys State Orientation Refinement Act. All right, all in favor, stand up and say aye. All right. I see some people sitting down in the back. All right, so we're all unanimous here? All right, Boys State Orientation Refinement Act has passed. Okay, so we don't have many bills left, not many from the Senate and also not many from the ones that we ourselves drafted up. So I'm going to extend a motion to anyone who would like to see a bill, who drafted a bill, who'd like to see it presented. If you want to just come up and say which bill and announce it as a motion and see if we get a second and go up.
The alcohol.
Mr. Speaker.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Could I make a motion? We hear the amendment to the alcoholic beverage control law bill.
You make an amendment to the alcohol?
So that's the title of the bill.
Oh, amendment to the, okay.
Yeah, it's a change to the established law.
All right, I see. Do we have a second? All right, all in favor of moving to discuss and vote on the amendment to the alcoholic
beverage control law.
Alcohol and beverage control law, please stand up and say aye. Actually, you can just say aye. You don't have to stand up. All right. For motions from now on, no one just say aye. All right. So we're gonna move on to that. I'm gonna hand it over to the bill speaker. Oh, yeah, committee members, if you just want to come up, you can do that now. We're going to go over, I'm going to hand it over to our bill speaker who's filling in. All right? Thank you.
This bill is presented by the Alcoholism and Drug Abuse Committee on the second day of July 2024. The title is Amendment to the Alcoholic Beverage Control Law. I'll now begin with the preamble. The current Alcoholic Beverage Control Law has a section commonly called the 200-foot rule that dates back to Prohibition. The rule is that if restaurants, bars, or clubs are within 200 feet of a place of worship, are allowed to get a full liquor license. This goes against separation of church and state. It also hurts small businesses, I should say. All right, bill proper. The 200-foot rule in the Alcoholic Beverage Control Law will be altered to only apply to restaurants, bars, or clubs within 200 feet of a school, not a place of worship. Be it resolved, restraints will no longer be relegated to selling wine-based liquor and can now sell hard liquor, which will boost profits. Provisions for financing. There are no provisions for financing. Enacting clause 1/1/2024. That passed, but that's what it says. Maybe they meant 2025.
Oh, sorry. That's not. I had two typos. In the preamble, it's supposed to be they aren't allowed to get a full liquor license, and it's supposed to be 2024. I mean 2025.
Okay. No worries.
All right, the Committee on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse, they can make any statements they would like to make. Yeah. All right.
Okay, so the law is pretty...
Mr. Speaker.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Speaker, may I make a statement?
You may.
So the law, it's pretty simple. Currently, if you're within 200 feet of a church, you cannot sell hard liquor. So you're required to sell wine-based liquor. So it's kind of a worse product. So I think everyone, despite us not being able to drink, if given the option, would you prefer to have regular tequila or wine-based tequila? I know personally, as I own a restaurant with this problem, we don't sell any wine-based liquor like tequila because it's kind of just a terrible product. Nobody likes it. Everyone complains about it. It hurts us in the long run because there are restaurants around us that have a full liquor license. And separation of church and state, we shouldn't even be having this problem in the first place. Yeah.
All right, would any other members of the committee like to say anything? All right, we're going to move on to our 3 questions now, or any statements in opposition. Any statements of opposition? Oh, you want to propose an amendment? All right, just before we do, anyone with any questions, concerns? Nope, okay. And also, since we didn't ask any questions, we'll have time to debate this amendment. All right. You may propose your amendment.
Can I just see to it that it's also extended to like shops and like grocery stores and stuff like that? Like shops and grocery stores too, that it's extended to that as well?
Mr. Speaker, may I respond?
Yes.
So currently the law, as I read it, only referred to, it doesn't refer to liquor stores to my knowledge, but if this is a problem that you guys see, then I'm definitely willing to change it. Currently it just talks about liquor license for bars, restaurants, or clubs. It does not reference hotels or liquor stores themselves.
All right. Anyone else want to discuss the amendment? All right. Should we move on to voting? All right. All in favor of the amendment, just raise your hand, stand up, and say aye. All right, the amendment has passed. All right, we're gonna move on to fully voting for the bill proper. Wait, did you guys think that was the amendment? Did you guys think that was the bill? No amendment was made? Oh, I thought he proposed an amendment. Oh, they canceled? I'm sorry. All right, I'm sorry. I suppose, okay. All right, the bill was passed. We don't have an official count, though. Oh, we do? Okay, we're fine then. All right. All right, 22 to 18 in favor. So the bill's passed. Nice work. All right, we'll send this over to the Senate. All right, this next piece of legislation that's moving up here, I think it's very important, and I think we should all 100% be in favor of it, but that's just what I'm saying, all right?
All right. This bill is presented by the Boys State Committee on the second day of July 2024. The title is the Anti-Gravy Act. Preamble. Concerned that gravy is being used to hide the lack of quality in some of our food/meals at Boys State, that gravy can provide gastrointestinal issues to many boys while marching. Bill proper. Gravy is, I'm not sure what that word is, but tasteless and unhealthy. Be it resolved that no more than 15% of meals at Boys State contain gravy in them. Provisions for financing. It saves money, not costs it. Enacting clause immediately.
Would anyone like to speak on this behalf, or should we just make a motion to move on to the vote? All right, all in favor, just say aye. All right, okay, we're gonna vote for the bill now. That was for the motion. All right, okay, we're gonna vote for the, guys, everyone sit down. All right, all in favor of the Anti-Gravy Act, please stand up, raise your hand, and say aye. I know, dude. It gets on your pants too. It's like so bad. All right. The Anti-Gravy Act has passed 39-2.
Mr. Speaker.
Do you wish to propose a motion?
No, just motion to have a time to adjourn, perhaps 11:15.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same.
I mean, I gotta be back by.
I just say
11:15.
11.
11. Okay. Motion to adjourn by 11 a.m.
How many bills we got left in the tank? What's the benefit of us ending at 11? If we just go a little long.
Actually, no, 11:15, because we have literally. Wait.
We only have 2 bills left. 11:45. Yeah. Will, rapid fire.
All right. Wait, 1 second, guys. The leadership is talking. All right, we're not going to make it time to adjourn. We're just going to finish the 2 bills we have. That sound good? All right, let's go.
I think it's based on whoever's talking into the microphone.
Blah, 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 blah.
Wait, all right, guys, we're going to move on.
Moving on. I'm going to sit down.
Yeah, all right, everyone sit down. Okay. I'm going to hand it over to the bill speaker now.
This bill is presented by the Economic Committee. The title is Assisted Reutilization of Abandoned Spaces Act. Throughout the state, there are tens of thousands of abandoned buildings. These buildings and houses are not cost effective for people to reutilize them. This can bring in new businesses and lower housing costs, help reduce problems of urban sprawl. Bill proper. Whereas giving grants to people and businesses buying abandoned spaces for houses and businesses, the housing costs will be lowered, reduce of the urban sprawl, and helps to bring in more businesses and more commuting that is more usable. Be it resolved, using general revenue funds, the state offers money grants to the people to buy buildings based off of the level of decay, location, and use of building. Provisions for financing, general revenue funds. Enacting clause, December 2025. What was that?
I got to fix some of the wording.
No, you're good, you're good.
So, permission to speak, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, you got it.
All right. So basically throughout the state, we don't have an exact number, but there's an estimate of almost like 47,000 unused buildings and even more like vacant, really just office spaces. For example, in New York City alone, there's an estimate of over about 2,000 buildings. This would equal 70 from, this was from MIT and Harvard researchers in urbanism. They estimated that there's 74 million square feet of vacant office space, which would be equal to 26 Empire State Buildings worth of office space. In our Empire State Building alone, there's over 1,000 businesses that occupy it. So the idea is to use, create almost a pool to give for grants to, certain businesses, even home buyers who are reutilizing abandoned spaces that people haven't touched for a while. The basic just idea or kind of principle of this is to make it a little more cost effective and bring in some of these new businesses into some of the areas that they couldn't occupy before. It helps with environmental too, because it reduces problem of urban sprawl. We don't have to just keep expanding and expanding cities. We can just reutilize what we already have, almost like just reuse, reduce, recycle. I don't know. But this is not just for New York City. There are plenty of spaces all over the state. It's a little harder, to actually know some of the facts about all over the state, just because, a lot of people are leaving upstate much more rapidly, so the abandoned spaces aren't as recorded. I think that's good for now.
All right. Does any other members of the committee want to make any statements? All right. No. So we're going to move on to three. If anyone has any questions for our three questions or opposing statements.
Speaker, may I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
So, will this be helping with like renovations for these abandoned buildings, or just grants for the buildings?
So your question was just, would it help for renovations? Yeah, that's basically the idea of just the general grant to make it more of a usable space. Some are just like kind of decayed past where like, oh, okay, let's just get a different building. It will be too costly to buy this abandoned space and reutilize it. So the government can give money to incentivize people to come back to these spaces, which then also incentivizes businesses. It incentivizes people to buy housing. It lowers some of those market costs. So.
Any other questions? Or?
Can I ask a question, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, you may.
So I'm pretty sure in your speech you said it was for both New York City and upstate. So it's entire state, right? So how is it going to be? Is it going to be easier or harder to enact this plan in upstate, and how do you plan to enact it into upstate?
So the idea, like it was mentioned before, is just the general kind of rules for how much money you can give. It's based off of location, how decayed it is, and then the use of it. So for something like farmers, it's a business. The state government can make money back off of it. There's a second part to your question. Can you say it again?
So what's the plan into creating this infrastructure in upstate New York rather than the city? Because the city, it's centralized, and upstate, it's sprawled out over the rest of the state. Like you got all kinds of like abandoned buildings and towns and everything all across.
You're just talking about like. No, it's just like a grant. The state holds the money. It's not like New York City is holding the money. You just apply for a grant. Yeah, you can do it by person, by business, anything like that. So every person can.
The speaker would like to ask a question. So I'm not like an expert on this subject, but I know there's I think I just looked it up now. There's almost 89,000 unused apartments in New York City alone, and I think it's about the apartments are being abandoned has artificially jacking up rent, and it's about state. state rent regulations? Like, how would you address something like that? Like, my time's but like, so a lot of what? Hold on, I'm like losing my train of thought here.
Are you talking kind of like almost the housing market, but for rent?
Yes,
Kind
like, yeah, and some landlords are just not renting out their apartments because it's not like profitable to do so. Would there be anything to address like this, or would you like to like make an amendment maybe or something?
So this is part of it. I mean, it's considered almost like a business, having these apartments. So someone can apply for this grant like a landlord to try to reutilize these spaces. I mean, it's just a building, unused a building. So I think that would be already part of it. It's giving money, which it would help the housing market and the renting market because then it could lower prices, or more accurately, offer more apartments, offer more houses, which then can help lower prices for some of the people.
All right, thank you for answering. All right, are there any proposals for amendments? All right, I think without further ado, we're going to move on to voting. So, all in favor of the Assisted Reutilization of Abandoned Spaces Act, please stand up and say aye. Aye. I don't have a vote, by the way. I'm just saying aye because I endorse. Yeah. All right, how many nays? Just say out and just call out. Uh, 41, the Assisted Reutilization of Abandoned Spaces Act has passed 41-0.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm from the Senate. Could we just have the people that made the Boise State Video Creation Act? Because we don't have a name or number.
Oh, you don't have a name or a number?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's some members. There's a couple members of the Boise State Committee. Oh, actually, hold on. We just passed a bill. Wait, no, that was for the book. Well, you guys sent us a bill just that was directly from the Senate. It wasn't even one of ours. We already passed it. We did that so just in case you guys rejected ours because we felt that it was important. We'd have a fail-safe.
Yeah,
So
this is from you guys, though.
Yeah, I think we might just not let it get to the floor. Like, we might
Okay.
just shoot it down because.
Okay. Well, I was just conferencing with the governor, and he said he just wanted a name just so that he could sign it.
Oh, he wanted a name for
Yeah.
all. Yeah, can we actually put on the names of the assembly members who worked on our bill because they're both very similar ideas.
Well, that is your bill.
I'm aware, but
Oh.
there's a bill that's already been passed that's identical that came from the Senate.
That has been passed. That's the
Yes,
thing.
that's gotten signed off by the governor as well. So that's like in full effect.
Not yet. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna vote on that now.
No. It's been passed in both parties. It just needs.
Oh, it needs a name.
It needs just the credentials to be signed by the governor.
Okay. Yeah, you go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. All right.
Thank you.
I'm sorry about the misunderstanding there. Yeah.
All good. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. All right. Got it. Thanks for coming too, by the way. All right, should we adjourn now or get one more? Before you guys say anything, I'm just let me finish what I'm gonna say. So, So, I want to maybe get through one more bill before we adjourn. If you want, we can motion to adjourn now. We do reconvene at 1, so we'll have time, but I was wondering if we could just get one more done. We could have time to focus on any Senate bills that come in when we reconvene at 1. All right, we'll do one, just one more, all right? All right, I'm going to hand it over to the bill speaker. Oh, wait, he's back. Yeah, he's back.
All right, this is the prohibit sale of allowances for factory pollution caps. This was an assembly bill, right? Wasn't this one of ours? It's not circled. Say again?
That was proposed by the assembly.
Okay. This was amended then? No, okay. All right, so air pollution is incredibly harmful to the environment. The university corruption for atmosphere research reported that air pollution, such as CFCs, cause a hole in the ozone layer. As it stands, New York State holds factories to a cap for how much carbon emissions can be produced. However, the state allows factories to exceed that limit or to buy space, also known as allowances for pollution amount, from factories under the limit under the limit for the want of greenhouse gas emissions to avoid fines or other consequences. Whereas the current buy and trade system allows factories to go over the cap and purchase allowances, be it resolved, this bill will make sure every factory in New York State stays under their cap. Provisions for financing, factories that exceed the limit will be fined, increasing with each offense.
Members of the... Okay. Yeah, what committee are you guys, just so I can...
Environmental and conservation.
All right, members of the environmental committee, you can now make any statements you wish to make.
So as it stands, factories in New York State, they have a cap of how many emissions they can produce. And if they go over that cap, they can make up for it by buying up space from other factories that haven't gone over that cap yet. But that doesn't really solve the issue because these factories are still exceeding how many emissions should be produced, and these areas are still being destroyed. So with this, if this bill is passed, they won't be able to go over that cap anymore, and it will actually be enforced.
All right, do any other committee members wish to make any statements? Mr. Speaker.
What? I'm good.
Ask, like...
Can I have the floor?
Yes, you may.
All right, so for the funding, we were just looking to charge like a flat rate based off of the annual income of the factory. And repeated offenses, the charge will increase until the end of the month where it will be set back to its minimum.
Any other statements from the members of the committee? All right, we're going to move on to our 3 questions. Any questions? Anyone in opposition? Anyone wishing to make an amendment? Okay, I guess we'll move on to vote then. So, so are we all in favor of prohibiting the sale of, actually, I'd like to make a statement here, a question, right? Couldn't we potentially risk destroying industry or losing jobs and sending jobs out of state with, this tax if they exceed the limit? Would you guys like to respond?
Yeah, so it is a possibility, but as it stands, there is a cap right now that some factories are meeting, and they're still in business. So ideally, others can also meet that cap. And production, as it is, I mean, things are already being overproduced. So hopefully, by setting a cap, not only are we reducing the emissions, but we're also kind of halting overproduction. So, if you want.
Mr. Speaker, can I make a comment about or respond?
Yes, you may.
So your concerns about the cap affecting the industries, these caps have already been measured to take that into account. and so that it doesn't affect the factories. It's just that now they're actually being enforced.
Were these, so they were not, like originally these caps were not being, if these caps were exceeded, they were not being taxed, these companies, or like held responsible in any way?
Not in any way, but there was an easy way to get out of it by buying these allowances so that you wouldn't be getting fined or taxed. But now if we prohibit the sale of these allowances, they actually have to be held to that cap. But the cap's already been calibrated when it was originally introduced to make sure that the companies aren't hurt too much. But now they're just trying to go over the allowances, probably just to make more profit and a little bit of greed.
Okay. All right, let's move it to the floor, right? We're going to vote? Okay. All in favor of the prohibition, prohibiting the sale of allowances for factory pollution caps? Stand up and say aye. You're in it? So are we unanimous? No. No?
16 yeas, 3 nays for the nationalists. 26 yeas, 5 nays.
All right. The prohibition of the sales of allowances for factory pollution caps is passed with 26 yeas, 5 nays. All right. Everyone sit down for a second before we motion to adjourn. Thank you all for you guys have been really great. I know not everyone's be here. Everyone's exhausted. I am too. I was sleeping on my bed before we got here, so I passed out. All right. So yeah, thank you guys for giving me respect and thank you. All right. And giving everyone who came up and talked. And thank you for all the great ideas you posed. It's really awesome to hear all your ideas. All right. So I think everyone is itching to go. So let's motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Are all in favor of the motion? All right. The assembly is adjourned.
I don't know if we're going to need the table back at 1 o'clock, so be safe. Put it back down.
Dimitri. Is this a motion? How does it work with the camera? How does it work with the camera?
I have no idea. It's on.
I shared my own. Thank you guys all. We were this was actually.